Delta Airlines was hit hard by the pandemic, as was all of air travel, but it's on the way back, reporting a profit last quarter for the first time since COVID hit. And today, it's ramping up its return with some major expansions in and around New York. And welcome now the CEO of Delta Airlines, Ed Bastian, coming to us from JFK. So it's great to have you back on with us. I talked to you in the dark days when you were hemorrhaging cash. Things are looking better. Tell me about what you're doing today.
Well, it's always good to be with you, David. Real excitement here at JFK. We're looking forward to a strong holiday period coming up, and as we continue to peg our recovery to the return of international travel, November the 8th is when our country can finally start welcoming back in European nationals and other international visitors to our country. Delta wants to be prepared to take them where they need to go. So we announced today that for this fall and into the winter and holiday season, we're adding 100 flights to our New York schedule between LaGuardia and JFK, continuing to establish Delta as the leading airline in New York.
So, Ed, as far as you can see into the future, you said you think the holiday period looks pretty good. But how far back are you? Once you get these 100 flights added, how far back are you? How far further do you have to go?
Well, as a company, today we're about 2/3 of the way back in revenue terms compared to where we were back in the 2019 levels, and that's on a system-wide basis. New York's been trailing that a little bit. The recovery's been a little slower in New York, but with these flights that we're adding, plus what we've added and announced up in Boston in the last few weeks, the Northeast actually is taking a big step up into the fall and winter season. I'd expect by next summer, we're going to be back pretty close to a full schedule here in New York.
So as a passenger, how should I expect that my experience will be changed by COVID? I mean, there's some reports I think you referred to in the earnings call, actually, about sort of a new premium version of coach, where it's not quite business class, but it's better than coach, maybe because people are a little reluctant to be too close to one another?
Well, there's been a lot that we've been through over the course of COVID. Delta was the only airline, as you know, David, that blocked middle seats throughout the entire pandemic. We're back to selling those seats now that people are comfortable traveling in large numbers. But our cleanliness standards have improved. The quality of the experience continues to get better. We've retired over 200 airplanes, so our airplanes are fresher and younger. We're taking new ones. In New York particularly, we made major strides in getting our new facilities built at LaGuardia and JFK. We took the downtime opportunistically, and by the spring of next year, we're going to be opening up our brand new LaGuardia Airport, which we can't wait to unveil to the public. So a lot of excitement in the air, and as business starts to return, as international starts to return, I see this industry recovering in a very, very nice manner.
Yeah, for those of us who travel out of LaGuardia, insofar as we travel, we can't wait to have the new terminal there open for Delta. No question about it. You just mentioned business. Where is the business travel at this point? Insofar as you're 2/3 back, are you 2/3 back on the business travel? And when do you expect it to get back fully, if ever?
So if I were to break our business down, we got three big segments. Our domestic consumer business, which has been for in the past to leisure, that's already fully back. Our consumers are traveling at 2019 levels, if even beyond that at the current time. Business today is about 50% of the way back. We stalled when the variant started to pop this past summer, but we're back on a really nice pickup. We've been seeing for the last 6 weeks our week-over-week business bookings really significantly picking up, domestic first and then international follow. And the last part of the business that has yet to really show much sign of recovery is our international business. U.S. travelers can go abroad to many markets around the world, particularly into Europe and Central and Latin America. But for international travels coming to the U.S., it's largely been a closed market. Almost half of our international business are from those international points of sale. So November 8th is a huge date for us that we can bring the travelers back from other parts of the world to reunite with family and friends and their businesses. So I think it's going to be a very, very good holiday season. I'd encourage everyone to buy your tickets because we're going to be flying probably pretty close to full as you get through Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then as we enter the spring, I think that'll be the next step for us to take even more signs in terms of added destinations and flights back. So by summer of next year, hopefully our business will look pretty close for business as well as international and domestic consumer to where we were in 2019.
Do you have any sense, Ed, of the international business, how fast it'll come back? You mentioned the November 8th day, which as I understand is the date the United States has said, okay, fine, if you're traveling from overseas, you can come in, provided you have proof of vaccination and you've taken a test. But do you have a sense it's going to spring back right away?
Based on our bookings, I do. We saw when the international news was announced several weeks ago by the White House, our international point of sales climbed tenfold almost overnight. And that rate, while it's come down just a little bit, it's still hanging in there somewhere between 3 to 5 times the level of bookings that we had been seeing previously. So we know there's a huge amount of demand. And I'd equate it, David, to what we saw this summer in the U.S. as once the CDC declared that it was good to travel, people were vaccinated in large enough numbers, we saw our bookings overnight soar, and I think we're going to see the same thing here with international travel into this holiday period and then again in the spring.
So I know you're looking forward to getting the international business back, but in the meantime, has that increased the competition domestically because the international has been somewhat suppressed?
We're a competitive business at all times, so we especially when there's not as many travelers out there, we fight even harder. So it's had the effect that you'd expect on fares. Prices have been, relatively modest in terms of where they've been historically. There hasn't been any increases. In fact, they're generally off somewhere probably 10 to 15 points from where we'd expect them to see. But as the international aircraft can start to return to international destinations and the domestic system gets normalized, I think you're going to see that competition will be in good balance.
So there's the top line, there's the revenue, getting the passengers back in the plane. There's also the cost element. And obviously we've seen fuel prices going up around the world in all sorts of places, but including jet fuel. Give us a sense of what you're looking at, particularly in the fourth quarter here.
Well, jet fuel has doubled over the last 12 months, and just in the last month or so, it's up close to 20%. It is our single biggest input cost as a commodity anyway, second to the cost of our people. And those price increases are hard to capture in the very short term. So when we gave our earnings news last week, we announced the first airline back to profitability, which we're pleased to be for the third quarter. Fourth quarter is going to be a little pressured. I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that. We might have a slight loss in the fourth quarter because of those fuel prices. There's a lag between when the price in the market hits and the time it takes to get that pricing out to our consumers.
Ed, you've been leaning forward on ESG, particularly when it comes to sustainable air fuel, SAF, as I understand the acronym is. Does the phenomenon of the increased prices of jet fuel right now delay the time you can really move to that? Because at least to date, as I understand it, that SAF has been more expensive.
It doesn't delay it. It's still a challenge because SAF is somewhere between 3 to 4 times what we pay for jet fuel today. And so as a result of that, the energy producers are not incented to produce SAF because they don't know if they have a client, and the airlines can't afford to pay that much higher level of costs. So that's why we're working with our people in Washington and on the Hill to try to figure out how we can incent the right behaviors for the energy companies to be able to get the proper return to produce SAF. Because today at Delta, if we were to buy the entire U.S. supply of SAF, that'd only be enough for us to fuel only Delta planes one day of the year. So as you can see, the supplies are really low. You want to incent the airlines to be able to buy them, and we're ready to pay a higher price for them, certainly, but we can't pay 3 times the price. And through our joint efforts and working on the Hill, and there's some good language in the legislation around blender fuel credits and the like to help incent the right behaviors on this. Hopefully we can get through. Our goal by the end of this decade is to have 10% of our total volume in SAF.
And finally, Ed, Delta Airlines is, among other things, a very large employer, and like other large employers, has had to come to terms with bringing people back to work and the question of vaccinations. I know you have a particular incentive program you put into place, actually, to encourage your employees. First of all, what percentage of your employees are vaccinated right now?
Today, 90%.
So that's a pretty good record. At the same time, as I understand, Delta employees have to pay something, a surcharge, because of the extra costs if in fact they get COVID and are hospitalized. Has that worked?
It has worked. When we got through the summer, we had gotten about to a 75% overall vaccination level. And that last 25% is the hard number to move, and that's why I think you've seen the effects of vaccination mandates taking shape in various industries around our country. At Delta, we wanted to do it without a mandate specifically. We wanted to do it with our employees respecting their decision, giving them an alternative if they decide that the vaccine is not something that they can take for religious grounds, for some other purpose. We do provide an alternative. We provide exemption requests, which we're monitoring, but also there's an insurance cost if people want to stay on our insurance plan and stay with the company. There's a $200 surcharge, which is a pretty hefty surcharge, but it's the incentive to get people vaccinated, and it's working. We jumped from 75% to 90% in a space of about 6 weeks, and we continue to see that number climbing. So my sense is by the time we're into the better part of November, the latter part of November, we'll be at least 95% vaccinated as a company. We will have exemptions for religious and medical reasons, which we will consider and look at. But we are proving that you can do it, short of calling it a mandate. We're giving people some options and some choice in the matter, respecting them and trust them to do the right thing.
And how are passengers reacting? We hear some instances of so-called air rage, that people are upset about having to wear masks, which we all have to wear on the aircraft. Is that a widespread problem, or is that just more anecdotal?
It's been a fairly, it's been widespread, but not large in numbers. I think throughout the entire period of the pandemic, there's been challenges as people have returned to the skies. We don't have a lot of our normal business travelers and some people that are more accustomed to what's required as you go through air travel. So I think that mix has impacted us a little bit. Certainly masks have been a challenge, and I hate the fact that our flight attendants and gate agents have turned into having to monitor as mask compliance, but we do, and we make sure our customers are doing a great job in that. Our people are well trained. They've managed. We've had a few incidents, not a lot on Delta, but anyone that doesn't want to wear a mask and they're on board, we give them the option to either wear the mask or they're taken off the flight and put on our no-fly list. And we've had about 2,000 people that we've put on the no-fly list, the permanent no-fly list, over the course of the pandemic.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Ed, and really congratulations on that profitable quarter. I know that was quite a feat. That's Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian coming from JFK Airport.